Welcome to the Untold Story podcast, everybody. I'm Martha McCallum. It's July 18th, 2024. We are on day 4 of the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, and what an extraordinary week it has been in so many ways as we get ready to hear tonight from President Trump. And he'll accept the nomination. So who better to talk to than Kellyanne Conway, who joins us now, former senior counselor to President Trump, former campaign manager of the 2016 campaign, and the author of Here's the Deal. And that's the name of your new program as well. And of course, she is the head of KAC Consulting and just a longtime political pollster and deep thinker about all of the issues that we cover. So Kellyanne, it's always great to see you. She's also a friend, and wonderful to be with you today.
Wonderful to be with you, Martha.
So let's take a look at what happened last night first. JD Vance, controversial pick. If you ask some Republicans, a lot of people had their person that they really wanted the president to pick. What did you think about the pick, and what did you think about his speech last night? What does he do for the president's campaign?
Sure. I thought the most important elements of Vice Presidential nominee JD Vance's speech last night lied in him tying the poverty and the forgotten, almost invisibility of the people with whom he grew up in Middletown, Ohio, off of Appalachia, and Biden's policies. So he's just saying, people like Biden, who have been in Washington longer than JD Vance have been alive, when you vote for trade policies, when you vote for energy policies, tax and regulation policies, when you ship our wealth and jobs overseas legally, then the net effect of that is that those at the bottom rung of the economic ladder in the first place are affected the first and foremost. And I like the way he tied that. I think it brings a very raw, real story to have had his mother there in the president's box, sitting seats away from President Trump, and him acknowledging her and saying, as many of us know, we all know someone, we all love someone who struggled with addiction of some sort, or mental challenges. And he said, there's my mother, and she's almost 10 years sober. She'll be 10 years sober in January, basically when they would be inaugurated. And when you do the math, she's been sober, sometime into her 60s or 70s, whatever the case is. So that's his way of saying you can overcome. The pick is President Trump broadcasting to everyone that he is focused on those 3 states that he won in 2016, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, that were elusive in 2022 and really have been elusive to Republican candidates down ballot since. In 2016, we had Republican governors, Martha, here in Wisconsin, Scott Walker, in Michigan, Rick Snyder, not a big Trump fan, but a Republican governor nonetheless. And we had just had one in Pennsylvania, it just switched. So I felt that the political ground has shifted, not just for Donald Trump, but we all know that 77,000 votes helped Donald Trump win in those 3 states in 2016. And if you look at 2020, it was 44,000 votes across Wisconsin, Georgia, Arizona. So new entrants to the electoral map. There's a lot of hope, and I think it's not wishful thinking. I think it's a very real movement that President Trump is doing better in Georgia and Arizona now, and that those eyes are still on Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan. The thought is that JD Vance helps because he's a senator from Ohio. He's got this personal story. And I noted that President Trump was asked the day he picked JD Vance and announced it. On Monday, he said, what do you plan to do with JD Vance? President Trump said, I think I'll just leave him in Pennsylvania. So I broadcast to you. Look, I think the big risk right now for everyone, the big untold, is how soon or how real are all these these rumors that are metastasizing into actual statements and calls for Joe Biden to step aside by Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi or Adam Schiff. We're starting to see this wellspring that we didn't see since the June 27th debate, Martha. If that's real, maybe the best play for the Democrats is Kamala Harris at the top and Josh Shapiro as a number 2. Then you take Pennsylvania almost off the electoral map or make it really super competitive. Popular, newish governor of Pennsylvania, and who's also Jewish and very good on Israel. And so you stabilize the Jewish vote. The idea is you make much more competitive, not remove Pennsylvania from electoral competition. Then we have a different ball game. Not just Kamala at the top of the ticket, who has lots of weaknesses on her own. If she didn't, I think she'd be the nominee. She would have been the nominee by now for a long time. But it's a different dynamic, and if you change the dynamic, makes the ticket a little bit more romantic. If people want to make history, I think folks are a little tired of that. little tired of. We have the first this and the first that. It's like, and I have my last mortgage payment that I can't make. So stop with it. You're making history, and you're making history in all the wrong ways for my everyday unaffordability and our lack of security.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because you see the Republican Party's transformation over the past 8 years, and you can really take it all the way back to the Tea Party as well in terms of what is talked about. And I've been covering these conventions for a long time, and I remember the focus of night 2 or 3 being a smaller government, cutting the debt, all of these issues that we're not hearing anything about. And it almost feels like in the current environment, those issues still important to the Republican platform and the Republican philosophy and approach, but they're almost a luxury because people's needs are so much more immediate and in front of them, that they are not sitting in, Western Pennsylvania or Michigan or Wisconsin where, the factories are closed and there's a ton of for rent signs on the shops downtown, and they, are paying $20 for hamburger meat. They are not really focused on the debt.
They're not. And it's also for another reason, in my humble view, that Washington has done a great job. Both parties have done a great job, Martha, redistricting and gerrymandering some of these congressional seats so that they're so safe. Mm-hmm. You win as a Republican or Democrat by double digits or close to it. That reduces your incentive to tackle the debt, to work across the aisle, to do so, or to even surface those concerns as real. So when it's, God forbid if we're in a time of war or a global pandemic, of course more money gets spent. But people are essentially saying to pollsters like me, why is Washington spending money we don't have on things we don't need and didn't ask for in the first place? And that is a little bit of a bipartisan problem. I feel like if Republican candidates would take the high ground and re-imbue themselves and the party with credibility and confidence on reducing the debt, or in some cases, Martha, not adding to it so willy-nilly, they'd have they would have an advantage over the Democrats. The debt has exploded under Joe Biden. I saw the reports last month, in June, late June. It was thought that the debt would go up by about $400 billion and went up by over $1 trillion, and everybody kind of shrugs their shoulders like, okay, we don't care that there's an extra decimal point, a few extra commas. We're so numb to it, and we can't be numb to it because your children, my children, our grandchildren ultimately are going to be saddled with this. That is not.
And the spending that you're talking about is our tax dollars.
That's it.
And there is a tremendous amount of waste. And just objectively speaking, what you hear from the other side of the aisle is that we're going to solve the problems of the economic gap that exists in the country by handing out more money, whether it's helping you with your student loans, or helping you to get assistance to buy a home and things along those lines.
Or an electric vehicle, lots of incentives.
Exactly.
But you can't afford one.
The Untold Story continues right after this. I want to go back to this scenario for the Democrats, though, because this is really, and Ron DeSantis, Governor DeSantis touched on this last night. He said, here we are sitting at the Republican convention, and Republicans are feeling really great about where they stand right now and the, survival of the president after an assassination attempt. And there's this very kind of, heady, emotional moment happening here. But he said, don't underestimate the potential for Democrats to come up with a new ticket that is young and interesting and to hit the ground running hard in these battleground states. Tell me what your thoughts are on that and what that's going to look like.
He has a point. I would think Governor DeSantis, almost more than anyone this last election cycle, knows how quickly the political sands can shift.
Right.
And knows that ultimately your fate as a candidate for president or down ballot, Martha, rests in the hands of the voters. Not the donors, not the anchors, not the political pollsters, just the voters. And there will always be more of them than there are of us, which is good because we want that in this country. I think Ron DeSantis has another point, which is the Democrats have to shift this narrative and the facts away from Biden, because what afflicts Biden won't change. Age doesn't change. It never goes in a different direction. And so the main problem people have with him, the Fox News poll that came out on Sunday that didn't get as much coverage, I think, as it would have from all of us, Martha, had the events of Saturday not happened, had the convention not been unfolding. That Fox News poll is a direct indictment of the incurable fatalities of the Biden candidacy, perhaps the Biden-Harris candidacy, going into their convention in the fall. What did it say? I was talking about this with Karl Rove yesterday. That poll, the Fox News poll, basically said 63% of Americans, including 38% of Democrats in the Fox News poll, think that Joe Biden is imperiling our national security, that our president, our commander-in-chief, is making us more vulnerable, less safe. That is an unbelievable number, because even we as Americans, Martha, if you don't like the current occupant, if it's a different party than yours, we at least say, oh my goodness, foreign policy, national security stops at the water's edge. And we all wish and hope that and support the president to do well on that. Also, over 70% said that Joe Biden doesn't have what it takes to be president. So that's building now, and those are everybody's polls. If they go with a fresh ticket, I think they can shift and have a convention that just feels different. It returns the Democratic Party to this party of young outsiders, perhaps, that has always been their marquee moment. Obviously, JFK, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, even Jimmy Carter. 100 years old next month. God bless him, Martha.
God
Let's celebrate him. But he was 52 when he was elected. That's a young man.
Absolutely.
And now we have Joe Biden, and honestly, before him, Hillary. I'm not calling her old, but I am calling her establishment. And that bothered people against this, lightning bolt of Donald Trump coming in.
But Kamala cannot necessarily give that feeling to the convention. But maybe they can, sort of fix it up, right, to the greatest extent possible if they bring in Josh Shapiro as the vice presidential candidate. I mean, the feeling as we sit here today is that Biden could announce this as early as tomorrow. It's moving very quickly, and all of the markers that he set for himself, a medical situation, Pelosi and Schumer saying that, that I have to get out, which he said would never happen, has now happened. So all of these dominoes are falling. But how do you see the Kamala Harris situation? I'm not sure how you look at that. If I were the vice president and the president was stepping down, what are you talking about? I mean, one of the main purposes of vice presidency is to be the person who is there when the president is no longer capable to do the job. So I just can't see how they bypass her, as much as I know, and Democrats I've spoken to, they would love to. How do you see all that, artfully or unartfully, working out?
I think the biggest question of the Democratic Party right now, Martha, is how do you solve a problem like Kamala?
Yes.
I mean that sincerely. There's polling out today that shows Kamala Harris polling slightly worse against Donald Trump. Then it's a media poll. We can pull it, but
worse than Biden.
Worse than Biden by a couple points, and especially in the swing states. So you just said something very important. You said, the job of the vice president is to be ready if the president can't fulfill his duties. I'd go a step further. The job of the vice president should have been, for the last couple of years, to step in because the president cannot fulfill his duties already. We all know what we see. So I feel there was no Democrat, no Adam Schiff or Schumer or Hakeem Jeffries or Nancy Pelosi, no one, most especially Kamala Harris, who spends the most amount of time with her boss, Joe Biden, had the courage, the integrity, and the love of country to come forward and say, you know what, I was just with Joe Biden and I don't think this is going to work. I love him so much that I'm going to talk about moral, not medical. I'm going to talk about his, I'm going to be emotional for him, not political and electoral. This is all about electoral politics. They're not emotional for that man at all. Not a single one of them, Martha, has said, as we Catholic girls feel in our compassionate hearts, I feel badly for this man. Please get him off the stage and let him live out the rest of his life in Delaware. He spends 40% of his presidency there already.
We know that he's very stubborn. He's been around politics a long time, so we've seen him in action enough.
He's been underestimated before.
No,
but this is just
exactly. And talk about the president-vice presidential relationship. I mean, Barack Obama didn't want him to run. He wanted Hillary to run. Yes. He passed him over. He gave him, the Medal of Freedom in a big ceremony at the White House, like, okay, thank you so much. And then the other day, he literally ushered him off the stage. Yes. What a metaphor that was. But I just am fascinated by. So you're saying, people will put the mantle of blame on Kamala now as well because she didn't step in.
I think all of them. I mean, Gavin Newsom, nobody has stepped up. I can't think of a single Democrat. First of all, they never stepped in and said the Inflation Reduction Act, almost the 2-year anniversary of that, Martha, is going to do no such thing. Every single Democrat voted for it, including these so-called independent moderates like Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, two senators who are seen as bucking their party here and there, who both had to resign or face certain defeat in their re-election races this year because their party is not where they are. And so I look at everything from policy, all this Build Back Better, all this infrastructure bill, all this Inflation Reduction Act, the things that people are saying, hold on, that doesn't match up with my needs, to your point. Why are you doing that? Nobody stood up and said, this is wrong for the party, I'm going to go in a different direction. And nobody has stood up and said, Joe Biden can't do this job. Why don't we do a quiet intervention and make this following bargain with Joe Biden, something I said for the first time 18 months ago on Fox News. Martha, go to Joe Biden and say, look, pal, you can have the trifecta of life, and your numbers will go up stratospherically. I think Joe Biden can get his numbers up to 60, 70% approval, favorable, if you're just in the following. Somebody go to him and say, you won the presidency. You ran for president 3 times in 2 different centuries. You finally got the brass ring. Congratulations. Mm-hmm. You got rid of Donald Trump. We will forever be grateful to you as Democrats. Mm-hmm. You got rid of Donald Trump. And thirdly, now for your final act in politics, you are the guy who can pass the baton and be credited forevermore with elevating and electing the first female president of color in United States history. Who wouldn't take that deal? It sounds like Joe and Joe Biden wouldn't take that deal. Mm-hmm. I would take that deal. I'd say door number 2 for that, because it's not going to get better. You get the credit. You say, I'm the one who put her in the national consciousness, and she's going, and then you're actually even protecting your policy agenda, aren't you, Martha? Because you're saying everything we did policy-wise has been amazing. If I hear the word CHIPS Act one more time, I'm going to explode.
I know.
That's all they talk about.
I think that's what he's probably negotiating right now, whether or not it's too late.
Forced, but yes.
But I think that, it's another dig on him if they say to him, and you also we're not keeping your vice president, right? This is the person he chose, for better or worse. Her numbers are terrible, and that is probably obviously partly her fault, but partly theirs as well, in terms of the way that they, presented her and the way that the opportunities that they did or didn't give her. So I think that for him to agree to step down and also to ditch the vice president that he picked would be a deal breaker.
It would. The argument may be, since the Democrats are of this mindset right now anyway, Martha, which is, oh my God, you're going to lose the White House to Donald Trump. We're going to sweep out the House and the Senate. Oh no, it's all electoral. Their argument may be, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, in a very unique situation in 2020, helped us win as Democrats, but they haven't helped us govern. That could be the argument, that they were great electorally, but practically and politically speaking, they haven't been. People have no confidence in Kamala Harris's competence. If you don't believe me, believe the 28 senior staffers that she has shed, that just tells you all you need to know. These should be dream jobs. I had one, but they're hard jobs. Yes. And you really have to have the trust of the principal, but you also have to have respect for their work ethic. And in Trump-Pence, I thought that was the best pairing for 3 years, 11 months, and 2 weeks. It really all worked out for Trump and Pence. But we don't see that kind of synergy and that kind of working relationship between Biden and Harris. And I think she's also silly at a time of seriousness. And I'm not putting down our vice president. I don't understand why somebody's obviously intelligent and well-educated, has been in the public spotlight and public government positions for decades now, Martha. Why do all this nonsense stuff with the celebrities and look how hokey I am? People in this country are hurting. They're hurting. I grew up around them. So did JD Vance. They're hurting. All they want is relief. They want to be seen by their government. They want to matter again.
And a seriousness. Of understanding.
And we're going to hear that from President Trump tonight. I know that.
Kellyanne, thank you so much. It's great to talk to you. And we'll be doing it again. There's just so much going on between now and the Democrat convention, and I'm, as I know you are, just interested to see all of these next steps. So we hope
the graphics department will be the busiest people.
Exactly,
we don't even know who's running right now.
I know.
And every time we say to each other or other colleagues at Fox News here, Martha, we've never seen anything like this. We kind of turn our head 30 degrees and I'm like, oh, there's something new to see, something new on presidents. But that's why we love this. As much as politics seems sclerotic, it's Biden and Trump, or we had a Bush or a Clinton on the ticket for 24 straight years from 1980 to 2004 without interruption. As much as it seems static, it really is so dynamic, and that's what makes it so exciting.
100%. I've covered so many conventions where it's like watching what they're doing to try to generate enthusiasm and emotion and real moments. Like, what can we do to make people, be touched by what we're talking about or have moving speeches? It's its own dynamic right now. It's organic, starting from last Saturday in Pennsylvania and that horrific event, and everything that we've seen this week. I think it's been a very well-run convention, and we'll, assess the Democrat convention when we're there on the same terms. But I think it has been successful for the Republican Party watching all this. So, Kellyanne, we always love talking to you.
Thank you, Martha.
Such a great depth of understanding on all these issues, and hopefully you'll be available to us a lot in the coming weeks. Great to see you.
Thank you.
I'm Martha McCallum. That's The Untold Story. Listen ad-free with the Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app.